All right, this is Jeff Zimmerman. I'm with the Iceman, John Scully, former light heavyweight contender, and one of the trainers to one of the hottest fighters out there in the world, Artur Beterbiev. Just came off a masterful performance this past weekend. And John, man, how you doing?
Feeling pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, man. You were just on ESPN this past, what was it, Saturday night? I kind of lost track of
Saturday. Yeah.
Saturday night against Callum Smith, former super middleweight champion. Had a tough go at it against Canelo. But a lot of people going into the fight were like, maybe this is the time. Maybe this is the time. And
Yeah.
then Beterbiev did what he always does, 20-0, 20 knockouts. Talk about that night.
As it was happening, it occurred to me, because, sometimes it looks different when you're there in the corner, and I don't know how it looks to the people on TV, but it occurred to me that that might be the best Arthur's ever looked in my eyes. Like around the seventh round, I was like, man, this guy's he's flawless. Like he's just taking this guy apart, making it look so easy. And we had some concern, as anybody would. Callum has that power with that hook, and Arthur just took it away from him, took the power away, kept his hands up, moving his head. I mean, it was a heck of a performance for sure.
Yeah, man. And listen, you've been around forever. We'll talk about your boxing exploits here in a little bit, but talk about your role, because you are in his corner. You are one of the trainers, but it seems like kind of like the Crawford, where they kind of have a team. Is that what it's like? Or talk about your role with Beterbiev.
Well, Mark is obviously the head trainer, and I come in for every training camp for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and I do the pads with him, and I just give my input. Me and Mark talk, but he gives me free reign to, like in the beginning, I used to be like, all right, what do you want me to work with him on? He goes, nah, man, like, yeah, you're not here for me to tell you. You're here to tell him. So, I just, like my input has basically been consistently with his jab, with his body punching, and with his what I call manipulation, like how to maneuver guys into punches and things like that. He did a little bit of that the other night. He did some nice stuff where he turned Callum into some punches, which made me very happy to see. But yeah, that's I'm just me and Mark work together, and he kind of tells me what he thinks is going on and what he wants to achieve, and I base my training off of that.
How did you guys hook up in the first place? Because, again, you've trained other guys before, but how did you get hooked up with these guys?
What happened was, I guess apparently Arthur wanted someone on the team that had fight experience.
Hmm.
Yeah, fight experience. And, there was also a coach. And Russell Amber knew me, and Mark knew me also. I had sparred up there with Stefan Willett and some of those guys. And so they brought me in March of 2016, and kind of like a tryout, I guess. And from the first day, everything gelled very, very quickly, and I've been with him ever since.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate in today's boxing world. We don't see guys often enough, but Beterbiev, he's a machine, right? He
Yeah,
he just like the Terminator. It seems like kind of built like that. What
yeah.
makes him so special?
I always everybody wants to know the answer, and I've always said it's his mentality. It's the way he thinks about life, about his approach to life, the way to live, the way to come up, the way to raise your kids, the way to get strong. And I'm big on mentality anyway. As a coach, I'm big on mentality, and he is the perfect guy to illustrate it. Like he is such a focused individual. It's hard to really explain.
So let me ask you, based on that, there was some noise that came out of the camp, or with the drug testing, there was an atypical test. For a guy that, at least on the outside, because a lot of people don't know him, you don't see him on social media, you don't see him, like all these younger guys. But did that faze him at all, or how did he take that?
He doesn't care. Like, he doesn't go on social media anyway. He probably didn't even know it was happening. He has a social media, but it's not actually him. It's like his friend. His friend will do it for him. But yeah, Artur, it's an insult. It was dirty of those guys, Eddie Hearn and them, to do that, to try and paint this guy in a bad light, and they'll say, oh, it was before the fight. We're trying to get in his head, but nah, that's taking it too far, because Artur is a super clean guy. His a devout Muslim. Like, when they say devout Muslim, they're talking about him, and he wouldn't disgrace himself by doing something illegal. That's not him.
It sounded like I saw an interview with Eddie. I think they were announcing the Francis Ngannou Anthony Joshua fight the other day, that someone asked him that he still wanted to understand how an atypical test can come up and then be okay the next day. But you haven't heard anything since, right? There's no other.
Yeah,
Nothing.
it's the fight's over. They're gonna let it go. I'm sure.
Right.
But the guy, Arthur's proven himself. Like, he puts the time in. He puts the work in. I mean, I've seen it. 6 o'clock in the morning. I've seen this man up at 6 o'clock in the morning doing workouts that people couldn't do at 5 in the afternoon. He's a monster, mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically. His tunnel vision is something to behold.
Who does he remind you of in your era? And you were in, one of the best eras ever. But does he remind you of anybody, like a Hagler, or who is he?
I would say Hagler, and I would say in a more specific way, like Bernard Hopkins. Bernard was famous for being fanatical about his training and taking care of his body. And Artur's very, he's that type of guy. And I always tell the story. I don't know if I told you, but I always tell the story. When he fought Joe Smith for the unified titles, that was in June of last year. He fight was on a Saturday. He got done with training camp, fought the fight, won the fight, went home on Sunday. Took Monday off. Tuesday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, he was in the gym hitting the tire on the wall with sledgehammers, miniature sledgehammers. I have it on video. He's doing that like 8 rounds, 3-minute rounds each. Nobody does that. Nobody does that 2 days after the fight. Forget it. They're not doing it. They may say they're going to do it, but then when it comes time to do it, they don't do it. He gets up. So that means he had to get up at 6 to get ready and to be there at 7. You know what I mean? Who does that? Tell me anybody. Nobody. Nobody does that.
They're already in vacation mode by that time.
Yeah, nah, man. Nobody's thinking about that. And nobody. Guys train hard. I know guys that train hard, but when the fight's over, it's over. That's it. They're not in the gym at 7 o'clock in the morning 2 days later, slaughtering the tire with a sledgehammer. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah, you bring up Hopkins, who I've gotten to know a little bit as well. And ironically, I know one of his favorite fighters was Marvin Hagler. So, You're right. Nobody, in the modern era, and Hagler or Hopkins goes across multiple eras for as long as he fought. Nobody was as disciplined as he was. So
Right.
Seeing what Artur's doing is, that's a great comparison.
Right.
Let me ask you though, you're a trainer. One of your probably best achievements, speaking of Bernard, was training Chad Dawson for a world title against Hopkins. What do you recall from that experience?
you know what? I'll tell you, I always wondered as a kid watching TV, watching fighters and watching trainers, to take a chance in a fight as a trainer, it's ballsy. Sometimes you have to put everything on the line. And there came a moment. The plan for the fight was for Chad to use his boxing skill because Chad was a master boxer, elusive and tall and all of that. And we started the fight, and for the first, say, 3 rounds or so, Chad was winning. Everything was working good. But I forget the exact rounds, but maybe around the 4th or 5th round, I saw something and I said, Hopkins is starting to figure us out. He's getting a little closer. Something's happening here. And I'm lucky that I see it because a lot of people might not see it unfolding. And I remember I took a chance. I didn't hesitate, but it was a chance. And I told Chad between one of the rounds, I said, Chad, everything I told you, forget it. I said, I want you to get on him. I think it was around the 7th round. I said, I want you to get on him. I want you to turn around. I want you to go right to him. I want you to get on him. I want you to put him on the ropes. I want you to put his back to the ropes. Let's get it on his feet, off his feet, and let's just maul him. Take it to him. And Chad, to his credit, did it instantly. And if you remember, from around that moment on, the last 5 rounds, we swept that fight and we won that fight.
Was that your biggest accomplishment to that date?
I would say so, just because I made a decision to try something that could have backfired, could have went very wrong, and I would have heard about it. I would have been the guy that ruined the chain, thing. Because Chad was going to do what I said. Like, if I told him to run backwards, he's going to run backwards. Like, he was that type of kid. So I didn't hesitate, and I was proud of that when I look back on it. I was proud of it because, and it's a funny thing, I've never seen the fight on tape. I've never watched it. I've never seen it. But people have told me, oh, you got to watch it. I believe it was Larry Merchant or Jim Lampley was talking very good about you, Emmanuel Stewart, and they made comment about how you did. You told Chad to forget everything I said, turn it around, do this, do that. And so I've never seen it on film, but I remember it in my head. And that was, that was a big moment because I took a gamble and lucky I had the fighter that could execute, and it worked.
Yeah, and they did say that. And when a guy, obviously Lampley, Merchant, but when a guy like Emmanuel Stewart, considered one of the probably top 3, Eddie Fudge, Dundee, I mean, a who's who of trainers, when he comments like that, I mean,
Yeah.
that must feel good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was nice.
How many trainers, John, and I'm here with the Iceman, John Scully, Jeff Zimmerman, how many trainers would throw out a game plan halfway through a fight? Like, how many would have the balls to even do that? Because that takes a lot of guts.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm proud of it because as it happened, I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about it. I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew what I was seeing. I knew I could see Bernard's mind working, and I could see that he saw something, and that, it's like, I don't fish, but I imagine you go fishing, when a fish is biting, and you're not going to get him right there, but you hang around for a few minutes and you're going to get him, and right? Well, I felt like Bernard saw something, and he was gonna walk Chad into some stuff. So I said, man, we spurred a moment. We got to do something. I said, you know what? Just flip it on him, turn it on him, just jump on him, back him up. And like I say, it worked out, and it became one of my greatest moments.
No doubt. And to do it with a guy like Bernard, a legend in the sport, that's
All
something
the
to hang
better.
your hat on there, John.
Right. Yes, sir.
But listen, man, let's talk about, it's not the elephant in the room. I think everything we've talked about is good stuff, especially for the fans out there. But everybody, first it was Crawford Spence. Everyone wanted that fight. We got that fight. But now there's kind of talk, Benavidez and Canelo, sure. But I think the fight that a lot of boxing fans want to see now is Beterbiev and Bivol.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if it's signed yet. I think negotiations may be starting, but break down that fight, man. You know your horse better than anybody. Bivol is a proven winner. Talk about
Right.
that matchup.
You know, Bivol is very good. You know, skills and style, and I'm not. I don't want to come across like I'm knocking him because I'm not. But I just have to say, like, when people talk about Bivol, subconsciously or not, they're basing it on the Canelo fight. They're basing him on the Canelo fight. That's what they think of first. Now, beautiful win, nothing wrong with that. But Canelo's a very small guy. You know what I mean? And he showed that. And, you know, Canelo, there's a reason Canelo has not fought Artur. He went up to light heavyweight twice. He didn't choose Artur. Make no mistake. There's a reason for that. You know, that's not like an accident. You know, by design, they avoided him. And I don't blame them because Artur is twice the size of him. And the thing is, like Bivol had Canelo on the ropes, and he wouldn't pull the trigger necessarily. You know, he wouldn't try to really get him out of it. Now, you know, with Artur, that's a whole different program. You know what I mean? So while it's a great win for Bivol, taking nothing from that, I'm just saying Artur and Canelo is a different ballgame. Arthur's way too big, way too strong. He's going to get him on the ropes and slaughter him. And like I say, Canelo moved up twice, and who didn't he fight? I mean, you know, it is what it is. Like when he chose Bivol, at the time, Bivol was not a big name like he is now.
Right.
He chose Bivol as opposed to choosing Artur, so that showed a lot. The same way he chose Kovalev instead of Artur. So, you know, sometimes things, you know, they say like if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it might be a duck. Well, you know, he could have fought Artur. You know, everybody, if you ask anyone in boxing at that time, who's the boogeyman? Who's the beast? It was Artur, even back then. So as great as the win is for Bivol, you know, Bivol looked bigger. You know, he's a big guy, and he showed that Canelo's not really a light heavyweight. Because if you remember, people say, "Oh, well, Canelo stopped Kovalev." I said, "Yeah, but if you remember, he had the weight clause on Kovalev. Kovalev couldn't weigh a certain amount after the weigh-in. Remember that? Like if he could only weigh 175, but then the next day he couldn't be like more than 179 or something. You know, that's just stupid. That's embarrassing. You know, I as a fighter, I just couldn't see, you know, doing that to someone. You know, it shows if I say to you, hey, I'll fight you, but you got to have one hand behind your back. Oh, I beat you. You had one hand behind your back, but you know, come on, man. Like beat, you know, Roberto Duran went up and fought Barkley and Duran and Hagler, no catch weight, no nothing. He was a lightweight, a big welterweight. He fought those guys and went to war with them, and you know, was doing extremely well with Hagler for most of the fight. You know, so it's a different mentality with these guys today. And I hope, you know, if the fight happens, there's no nonsense about weight clauses and anything like that. You know, I hope it's just up and up, light heavyweight, the best man win.
Obviously, Bivol, in your eyes, would have a better shot than a Canelo just based on size
Right.
and skill. Would it just be a contrast of styles, you know, that Bivol kind of moving and, you know, and
Right. Yeah, I mean it's obviously each guy creates problems for the other,
right.
right? The one thing that I've said repeatedly since the Gavadzik fight is 12 rounds with Artur is a long, long time. And you can imagine how up for the fight Artur's going to be when he fights Bivol. Like Artur, you will have not seen anything like it, you know, when he gets in that ring. Putting the pressure on is going to be, you know, obviously the number one thing. And he's going to do that. And it's Bivol is going to realize that Artur is not Canelo. You know what I mean? He's not a small guy. Artur Bivol is not going to have Artur on the ropes and letting his hands go, and Artur's trying to hide and cover up, and so it's a different fight. I think if people think Bivol is going to win, he's going to outbox Artur, then I say okay, no problem. But if you base it on the Canelo fight, right, I think that's that smart business, to base it on that.
What about a Benavidez who could easily go to 175? He's a big dude as it is, and he's a pressure fighter. What would that fight look like? It seems like it would be fireworks from the get.
Honestly, and I mean this. Like, I like Benavidez, and he's strong and all that, but I don't know. Like I don't see that as a hard fight for Artur. Honestly. Like I think he's made for Artur. Like he would, if you would say who shouldn't fight Artur Beterbiev, it would be him. I don't think that style, being strong and coming on later, you're not gonna do that with Artur. Artur wrote that book. You're not, he wrote the book. He's the prototype of the strong guy who gets stronger as he goes on. And I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see it. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know, but I don't see Benavidez as being this huge obstacle for Artur. I don't see that at all.
What about take your guy out of the equation? But what about Benavidez and Canelo? How do you see that fight playing out?
It's tough because he's big and he's going to let his hands go. Whereas, when Canelo gets on the ropes, a lot of times Canelo, like Mayweather, he can mesmerize these guys and freeze them. Like Mayweather won so many fights just because people got stuck in the headlights against him and they didn't know what to do, and they didn't know if they should try for the head or should they go to the body. What should they do? How do they beat this guy? And by the time they figure it out somewhat, the fight's over. Benavidez, I think, would punch through a lot of that Canelo defense. Canelo's got like the Floyd defense.
Right.
But a guy like Benavidez, I think, would punch right through that. And it would if Canelo's on his game, like really on his game, counter punching and stuff, he could probably run Benavidez into some stuff, but I think if he thinks he's just going to pot shot him and win like that, I don't know, man. Benavidez is pretty relentless. And I think Benavidez is going to feed off of the fact that once he sees how small Canelo actually is.
Yeah, no doubt. And we'll wrap up here in a few, John, man. Like I said, I've been dying to do this. We met at the West Coast Boxing Hall of Fame and obviously on social a lot, and love all the stuff you're doing. But a lot of people don't realize, at least I don't think they do in this era, that you were a light heavyweight contender, fought for the IBF title against Henry Mask. You've been in there with Michael Nunn. You've sparred with James Toney, Roy Jones Jr., who was one of my favorites outside of Sugar Ray Leonard, growing up. Who else? Vinny Paz. I mean, you've been in there with a lot of killers, a lot of great fighters.
Yes.
Talk about that era and just being in the ring with some of the best to ever do it.
At the time, I knew it was something special. And that's part of the reason I boxed with so many guys, because I said one day, this is going to be a big deal that I sparred with these guys. And when I always tell the story, when I went to spar Roy the first time as a pro, we sparred as amateur, but when I sparred him as a pro, when I got paid at the end of the first week, Stanley Levin, his manager, his lawyer, handed me the money. I said to him, "What's this for?" He said, "That's for sparring." I said, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I forgot that we were getting paid. I would have done it for free. If they said, we're having a tough time, we really can't afford to pay you, we'll put you up in a hotel, and, I would have said, fine. I would have done it for free because I knew who Roy was, what he was going to be. And I wanted to say, I did work with that guy. I punched that guy in the face at least a couple times.
You got your licks in, huh?
Yeah, we did. We did good work. We did good work.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask John, are you a better trainer than you were a fighter?
It's in many ways I would say yes. Uh because as a fighter, I had a lot of time. My most frustrating thing, it all intertwines, but I had a lot of trouble making weight for fights. It was really some of it was my own doing, but making weights was tough. It altered me a lot. Like I was never at my best because making weight just was such a horrible thing for me. And it is for most fighters. But for me, mentally, psychologically, physically, it really was horrible. And I always felt like I never gave my best. A few times, like a few fights here, several rounds here and there. I really fought well. I did well. But the thing I liked about sparring was there wasn't as much pressure because I didn't have to make weight for the sparring. So I could weigh what I want, they could weigh what they want, and we could just do it. And so I think I showed more of myself in sparring than I did as in fights sometimes. That's why I cherish the sparring with the guys that I did, Mike McCallum, and just so many people, Vinny Paz and Stevie Collins, just so many guys. And it was because I could show more of myself. Like, and even Vinny Paz, to this day, he sees me and he's almost like frustrated. He laughs. So he tells people, like, if there's people, like if you were there, he'd say, I always tell people, like, this is the best guy I ever sparred with that never won a world title. Because, I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what happened. And, I think a lot of guys who sparred with me wondered what happened. Why didn't I perform as well in the real fights? And it's a fluky thing. Some guys are gym fighters.
Right.
These guys who are just brilliant in the gym, and in the fights, they have to make weight, and just so many different intangibles come into play. It's a frustrating thing. It's something really irritates me sometimes. But I like the fact, at least, that when you ask people like Vinny Paz and Roy Jones or James Toney, they'll tell you, yeah, John was a good fighter. John gave me really good work. So I'm happy with that.
Sure. Was Roy the best though that you shared the
I
weight
would
with?
say Roy was the guy. I sparred with a lot of great fighters, right? A lot of top guys. But Roy was the guy who, going to bed the night before fighting him, you would just say to yourself, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, this guy, how am I going to beat this guy? You know what I mean? He was so gifted and fast and sharp. And, it's a tough thing to admit, like, someone's better than you, right? There's some guys, they're just better than you. But him, like, there's no question. There's just no question. Like, he was so good. And it's a shame that people today see him like people of my era see Camacho. They think of Camacho and they go, yeah, he's all right. But, he lost to Trinidad and De La Hoya. And I go, no, man, no. I'm talking about 15 years before that. I'm talking about when De La Hoya was a little kid and didn't even know who Camacho was. Camacho was awesome. Camacho was breathtaking. 1981, 1982, 1983, 84. In that era, Camacho was special. You know, he didn't fight De La Hoya until 97. You know what I mean? 98. So he's a different guy, and the people who watch him don't even know it.
Mm,
And it's a shame. There's so many people who only know Roy Jones from fighting Antonio Tarver.
mm.
That's a crime. That's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Him and like Hopkins that stayed around. Hopkins had a lot of success, obviously, later on, getting the light heavyweight title and all that. But that's a good point. I remember Camacho growing up and he was just mesmerizing on the TV screen. He
Yeah,
just
so
popped out.
fast,
Yeah.
so fast. I mean, if he was around today, he would outshine Tank and Haney and all those guys. They'd be talking about Camacho. They wouldn't be talking about Tank. They'd be talking about Camacho. 100%.
It's funny that you go there because I wanted, and I just got a couple more questions here, John. I do appreciate it. Talking about today's fighters and the 140 class specifically, the Tanks, the Haneys, and all those guys. I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier. This is a different generation, a different time. Are any of these guys generational fighters like that you see, like put Teofimo, Tank, all these guys? Or what are your thoughts on today's crop of young stars?
I mean, I think they're very good. You know, I don't want to be that guy like, oh, the guys from my era. You know, that's just silly. That's silly. Like guys today are good. Crawford is good. I mean, Crawford's very good. You know, there's very good fighters today. It's just that the difference is go to BoxRec. I challenge anyone. I challenge all your listeners. Go to BoxRec and look at Macho Camacho's record in 1981, 82, 83, 84, and 85, right? 81 through 85. Look at the records of the guys he fought, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. You're talking 27 and 1, 22 and 0, 19 and 2, 25 and 1, 32 and 0. Like that was who he fought every single fight. And, you know, guys today, they don't fight nearly as often. Camacho was fighting 5-6 times a year. Come on, 5 or 6 times a year. These guys fight twice. If a guy fought 3 times a year, it would be considered a big deal and people would praise him for it. You know, we've slowly drifted off into this where people growing up today are used to this.
Right.
That's how it is. I remember as a kid, Muhammad Ali fighting, defending the title, the World Heavyweight Championship, the biggest fighter on the face of the earth, bigger than anyone we have today combined, right? He fought 5 times. He defended the title 5 times in a year. Who does that? Nobody's defending the heavyweight title 5 times. Come on. You know, we live in a different era. We live in a soft era. Floyd Mayweather, great fighter, right? I get it. He's great. I get it. But Floyd Mayweather fought in May and September, twice a year. Come on, man. Come on. What are you doing? Sugar Ray Leonard, between November of 79 and September of 81, fought Wilfred Benitez, Roberto Duran twice, and Tommy Hearns, plus a couple other guys. But those 4 in that span of time. And you're telling me we can't get these guys in the ring with each other in over a year's time? I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing? This is crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to get behind a fighter when you see him every, once a year.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of, and Muhammad Ali did these exhibitions a little bit during his day, but De La Hoya fought 6-7 times a year, even going back to him. But these exhibitions that are taking place with the heavyweights, Ngannou, guys from MMA, I I kind of had a feeling what your thought on it. Do you just think it's like, what's the point there?
You know, I guess I'm an old school guy. I've never seen Mayweather and McGregor. I've never watched it. I've never seen Mayweather do any of those exhibitions with the Japanese guy and the wrestler guy. And, I've never seen it. I've never seen Nagano or whatever, the guy that fought Fury. I didn't watch. I don't watch. I've never seen Jake Paul fight. I've never seen any of those fights. I'm not interested. It's not real to me. And people say, "Oh, what's real?" I go, "You know what? Let's stop it." I have no problem if people want to box. If you want to box, box. But tricking people to a degree, and spending that money on what is not a high quality of boxing, like this Nagano. He's not a boxer. He's not a world-class boxer. Period. This is insane. If I pay money, I want to pay for the quality of the fights, right? I'm not into the spectacle. When Mayweather and McGregor fought, everybody I knew was glued to the TV, right? You know where I was? I was at a resort in the swimming pool when they were fighting, because I didn't care, because I knew it wasn't real. I knew what was going to happen. I said it before the fight, exactly what was going to happen. He played with him and drowned him the same way he spars, the same way I spar with novice guys to this day that have 2 amateur fights, and I work with them, and I wait till they get tired, and I hit them a little bit, and then they go home. You know what I mean? But Mayweather, I'm insulted that people actually thought McGregor had a chance. My brother told me McGregor was going to stop Mayweather because he's too big and he hits too hard. And I said, see, you're the type of idiot they sell these fights to. You're the guy that's making them the money, because you don't know anything. You think because he's big. You know what I mean? Mayweather would beat up guys that weigh 200 pounds that aren't boxers. He would torture them. But people don't believe that. You know what I mean? So I'm not into it. I'm not crossing over into the realm of this. I don't watch it. I don't do that. I'm diehard boxing, and that's it.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you, John. Let's end on a high note though, because I don't know if enough people know the greatness that you do outside the ring, helping a lot of your peers, a lot of your, guys you may have shared the ring with, or guys that are just guys that, former fighters that are going through tough times. And we both know there's more and more of those than people realize, the way boxing is set up and so forth. But talk about, I don't know if you want to name anybody. I'm not here to get into all that, but about all the fighters you help. You do a lot of fundraisers. I know you auction off signed gloves, and next day you're sending checks to these guys that are in dire need for health care, for food, for all that. Just talk about goodness.
Well, several years ago, I ran into a situation where I found out Wilfred Benitez was in bad shape and needed some money for something. I forget. I think it was I'll tell you what it was. It was during the hurricane in Puerto Rico, after the hurricane, and he needed a generator. I think it was to keep his medicine cold or something. And I said, man, Benitez, he needs help. And they had the address, whatever. So I went on my Twitter and I tagged a whole bunch of big hitters. And I can't tell you who it is, only because I heard that he heard I told somebody and he didn't like it. Like, he wanted to remain anonymous. But long story short, they needed like $10,000 for this generator. A big name in the boxing world, not a fighter, but a big name in the boxing world, saw what I put up, and he sent me a message, and he said, hey, how much do they need? And I said, it's like 10,200. And he goes, oh, where would we send a donation? And I gave him, it must have been a PayPal or whatever. And literally like 5 minutes later, Wilfred's sister called me and said, hey, John, this guy so-and-so just paid for the whole thing. He just sent me the money for the generator. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I told him about it, and I didn't think he was going to pay for the whole thing. And so I mentioned it to somebody, and they mentioned it to him, kind of, praising him for it. And he goes, yeah, he kind of kind of looked a little annoyed, and so I never say his name since. But it kind of snowballed from there. Different guys need help, and some of them badly, like really badly. And so I've I signed, I get things signed. I run into one good thing with me. I know a lot of people. I keep in touch with a lot of people. I'm friends with a lot of people. They like me, I guess, and they'll do stuff for me. I remember Roy Jones a couple years ago at the Atlantic City Hall of Fame. He got inducted, and somehow the conversation turned to this, and he said, "Anytime John Scully calls me for anything to help these guys, I'm there. I'll sign something. I'll do a video, whatever I need." So I've been able to get these guys to help me sign things, sign pictures, sign autographs, do whatever. And they know that I'm going to auction it off and I'm going to distribute the money. I distribute some of it to guys like Wilfred Benitez, Gerald McClellan, Pritchard Colon. People know their problem. It's not a secret.
Sure.
There's about 5 or 6 other guys who are famous, but people don't know their situation, so I don't publicize it. But they're just as famous and just as in trouble, and so I raise money for them too.
Wow, that's amazing, and I know you've been doing it for a long time, and and I tell people all the time, I've been in this game for about 20 years. Got started with Hall of Fame ref Richard Steele, who's turning 80 this month, by the way, and I see all the greatness he's done, not just through his gym and nonprofit in Vegas, helping kids off the street, and he does it without any fanfare, and I see that in you. You just do it because that's just who you are. And
I like it. It's
yeah.
funny. Like, I enjoy it, and it's funny because I don't know if it's bragging, but it's easy for me. It's easy. Like, I could get a guy to sign a picture. Like, I'll go to James Toney and I'll say, "James, sign this picture, man. Just sign this." I said, "I'll get $100 for that tomorrow." You sign it, $100 tomorrow. Mail it off, mail the money to the guy. I'm not losing money. It was not my money to begin with, so I'm not losing money. I'm just taking time.
Right.
And it's fun, man. It's fun.
Yeah. I always tell people too that boxing has a lot of problems, as we both know, but there's a lot of great people in the sport. A lot of good people, and you're one of them. Man, John, I could talk to you all night. And I know we'll do this again, but appreciate the time. I think myself and the boxing world is forever closer to that Bivol Beterbiev fight, and I know you'll be front and center. It sounds like this year it's going to be one of the best fights of the year, and great stuff, man. I appreciate it, and best of luck on everything.
I appreciate you very much. I'm honored that you had me. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, buddy. Be good.